This is Miss Karen with Children's Liturgy for the 19th Sunday in Ordinary Time. Our first reading today, we hear from the first book of Kings. And the books of Kings tell us what happened to God's people after they got to the Promised Land. And we also get to meet Elijah. And when we meet Elijah, he is a hot mess. He is in a cave on Mount Horeb, hiding his face from God. Elijah got there because he liked to run his mouth and he didn't really think out the consequences of his actions before he did them. So Elijah's in a little bit of trouble right now. So at the time that this takes place, God's people have fallen away from God and they have been worshiping the god Baal instead of God. And Elijah's had enough of it. So he goes up to the prophets of Baal and he's like, we need to settle this once and for all. Let's have a contest with a burnt offering. And whoever has the best burnt offering wins. And we know that the best burnt offering, that's going to be the God that's real. So Baal's prophets are like, you're on, let's go. And of course, God provides the most amazing burnt offering ever for Elijah, and Elijah wins. And Elijah can't leave well enough alone. And he goes and he pulls an Anakin Skywalker in the Jedi Temple with the younglings on the prophets of Baal. And he kills them all. And then the queen hears about it. And the queen is like, Elijah, I am coming for you. And Elijah bolts. He goes and he hides. And Elijah finds God in the stillness in this cave. And Elijah's like, let me tell you, God, what a terrible, horrible, no good, very bad prophet I am, because these are all the ways I stink at my job. And God is there. God's with him. And he's like, yeah, I know. But God kind of gives Elijah a nudge and reminds him that he's never going to give Elijah a task that he can't handle. And essentially, Elijah is told by God to pull up his Huggies and get out there and get back to work. And it's just kind of nice to know that prophets need a little nudge like that sometimes too. In our second reading, we hear from Paul's letter to the Romans. And we know who Paul is. We've heard a lot from him. Paul is a man who was Jewish and then had an encounter with the risen Christ on the road and converted to Christianity and went all over the world teaching people about Christ. And Paul in this letter is really upset. And he is upset because the Jews are not accepting Christ as the Messiah. They're not accepting him as the next covenant from God, like the covenants that went to Adam and Noah and Abraham and David. They can't see that Jesus is the culmination of all of that. And Paul is writing to the Romans to remind them and to tell them that now they're part of God's family and those covenants apply to them too. In the gospel, we hear from Matthew, and it's kind of cool because it's a continuation of last week's gospel. And if you remember that, Jesus had just been teaching people and there were 5,000 men and he fed them all with 5 loaves and 2 fishes and had a bunch of leftovers. So it could be nothing but miraculous. And after this, Jesus is tired. He needs some alone time. And so he sends the apostles out on the boat into the lake. It's almost like when your mom sends you outside at the end of the day and she's like, don't come back until the streetlights are on because I just need a minute to myself. That's kind of what I imagine kind of went down there. And so it's the middle of the night. The apostles are on the boat and the wind is kicking up and they're getting tossed everywhere. And then they see this figure walking towards them on the water and they are petrified. And the figure is Jesus. And Jesus is like, guys, just me. Don't worry. And Peter, God loved Peter because he didn't just see Jesus feed 5,000 men with 5 loaves of bread. Peter is like, if it's really you, you're going to let me come out there and walk with you. So Jesus is like, come on, Peter, let's go. And Peter goes out there. And while Peter's out there, it's almost as though he looks around and he realizes what a crazy situation he's in. And he gets afraid. and he starts to sink, and Jesus pulls him up. And Jesus goes, "Why did you doubt? You have little faith." And then Peter says something that's kind of mind-blowing. He says, "Truly you are the Son of God." And those words change everything in our view of Jesus. So your assignment this week is to find some alone time with God. You can find God in the quiet like Elijah did, or you can find God anywhere. Just sit and spend some time with him. There is adoration, Eucharistic adoration in church after Mass on Fridays, and there have been some kids there the past couple weeks, and it's been really nice. And that might be a good place for you to go with your family if you can, just to sit and spend some alone time with Jesus. This is Children's Liturgy for the 19th Sunday in Ordinary Time, and I am Miss Karen. Have a good week.